Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists.
Nobody expected Bill Maher to come at New York's mayor this directly, least of all Zohran Mamdani himself. He turned on him over communism and tore him apart on national TV. He didn't slow down for a moment. But before we move further, if you enjoy short commentary videos with full breakdowns, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. Alright, now, let's get back to our video.
But when he says the Democratic Socialists of America are actually communist, that's not one of them. And it's not hard to prove it, just by quoting the DSA and their candidates. It gives me no pleasure to have to do this. I'd much rather keep going the good vibes from my summer vacation. I had an awesome one, by the way. I totally got a girlfriend at Bible camp. However, right before we left, Vice President J.D. Vance was on the show, and I told him that if the Democratic Party keeps going in the direction of the DSA, my vote was in play. And all I heard all vacation was, oh my God, you're a Republican now. No, that's not what I said. I said in play. And here's why. Because not a week goes by where I don't read about some newly chosen, exciting new face in the Democratic Party. And then when that face opens its mouth, the Communist Manifesto or some other crazy comes out. Again, let's just read the quotes.
My vote is in play. That is the sentence that raised questions for Democratic strategists in liberal media. Because when Bill Maher, a lifelong Democrat who has hosted every major party figure for 2 decades, publicly announces that his own vote is no longer guaranteed for his own team, that is not a bad news cycle. That is a signal from inside the party. Look, Maher isn't running to the other side. He isn't switching political jerseys. He is standing right where he has always stood. It is his own party that has quietly moved. And critics argue that week after week, another Democratic voice echoes ideas they associate with the Communist Manifesto. Not once a year, not once an election cycle. Every single week.
Let's just read the quotes. The DSA platform says you work as much as you are able and no more than needed. If that was any closer to Karl Marx's dictum from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, they'd be sued for plagiarism. Not to leave any doubt, New York Mayor Mamdani once tweeted Karl Marx's words exactly. They're not trying to hide it. Their most popular influencer, Hassan Piker, thinks communism is so groovy. He laments the fall of the 2 of the most murderous regimes in history, the Soviet Union and Chairman Mao's China. Mamdani's aide, his top aide, Sia Weaver, said, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize property, it's over, and impoverish the white middle class. What? That's a goal? You know you're supposed to scare people into voting for you, right? One of the new soon-to-be Democratic congresspeople, Darlisia Chevalier, supports seizing all properties from landlords and said, seize the means of production. Mamdani has said the end goal is seizing the means of production.
Every single quote Maher just read is on the public record. Every one of them is verifiable. Every one of them was said by an elected or soon-to-be elected Democrat. The DSA platform sentence about working as much as you are able and no more than needed is almost word for word out of Karl Marx's most famous line, a sentence Marx published in 1875 and one that has been used to justify every failed socialist experiment since. Mamdani has posted the exact Marx quote on his own social media. To Maher, this is the part the party leadership refuses to face in public. The rising stars are not hiding, they are announcing. And the moderate wing has stopped pushing back because doing so gets you primaried in the next cycle.
I think they want to seize the means of production. Now, maybe you missed that in school or missed school altogether, but that's communism. That's communism, which we tried, and it doesn't work. Parties can change sometimes, you know. You have to keep up. Who freed the slaves? Republicans, Lincoln. Democrats were the racist party back then, but then JFK got elected and it switched. The DSA itself has switched, even 5 years ago. It shunned communists. That changed. Things change. Now the coalition within the DSA, called the Marxist Unity Group, is in ascendance, and I must take them at their word when their words include, our commitment is to the long-term struggle for a fully liberated, classless society, in a word, communism. What do they have to do? Tweet out, elect more communists? Oh yeah, Sia Weaver did that. Yes.
We tried it. It doesn't work. That is the simplest history lesson any modern Democrat has ever delivered on national television. Critics say Maher's biggest point is that political parties don't always stay the same. Look at the United Kingdom in the late 1970s. Under a socialist-leaning Labour government, UK inflation climbed to 24%. Trash piled up in the streets. Public workers walked off the job by the millions. The country's own government eventually had to beg the International Monetary Fund for a $9 billion rescue. In 1976, the largest bailout any Western democracy had ever taken at the time. In Maher's view, the DSA is quietly announcing the same kind of transformation inside America right now.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Mayor Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country. And this is the pendulum never lands in the middle problem I'm always about. Really, the choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism.
Straight up communist. That is the ruling. And critics say this line lands because Mamdani's own team has never actually denied any of it. His campaign advisors publicly told voters to elect more communists. His platform openly calls for seizing property. His own top housing aide has openly rejected the entire idea of private home ownership. To Maher, this isn't a hidden agenda buried in fine print. This is a broadcast agenda that the mainstream Democratic Party has decided to ignore and hope voters don't notice. And in Maher's view, the entire political system is now trapped between two extremes: corporate corruption on one side and outright communism on the other, with no honest middle for the ordinary working American to vote for.
Being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home?
Sia Weaver, senior housing aide to the mayor of New York City, openly against the idea of home ownership, openly in favor of seizing private property, openly on record calling home ownership itself a form of oppression, even though, according to Bureau of the Census data, more than 20 million African American families own homes in this country. Critics believe this is not a rumor and not a hit piece. This is the actual person now in charge of tenant protection in the largest financial city in the country. And her own writings are on the internet for anyone to check. To Maher, when your own city's chief housing official believes owning a home is a moral crime, the message to hardworking families is impossible to miss. Sell your apartment, move to Miami, move to Nashville, move to anywhere that still believes people should be allowed to own the roof over their own heads.
These are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime.
You can only learn this stuff for $95,000 a year. That is Maher's whole cultural diagnosis in one line. Elite private colleges have become the exact place where young Americans learn to hate the very economic system that paid their tuition, funded their scholarships, and hired their parents. While critics say that the receipts prove it, Bryn Maher's full cost has now crossed $95,000 for the 2026-27 school year. Harvard has crossed $86,000. Stanford has crossed $87,000. Working parents are borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars to send their children to these schools and are getting back adults who genuinely believe seizing private property is the answer to inequality.
That Mamdani, who's a straight-up communist.
No, he's not.
Okay, his philosophical pinnings, and I could read other things from the Democratic Socialist Party that show that it's not different than communism, a lot of it. They have statements about, like, the government should take over industries and so forth. Like, I mean,
well, I don't believe that, and I'm not a communist. And
but they do.
Even Maher's guest, a moderate liberal, agrees live on camera. The DSA is openly calling for the government to take over entire industries. That is not a progressive tax debate. That is not a moderate housing policy. That is a completely different economic model, one that has never worked at scale in any country in any century of modern history. What critics say is that the party's establishment leaders keep pretending nobody in their coalition actually believes any of this. But the next generation of Democrats now openly supports all of it and votes for it in DSA elections every single year.
Zohran Mamdani is coming. He's gaining traction. I am not a socialist, nor do I aspire to see socialism in the United States of America. I don't know anywhere in the world where true socialism has worked. I don't see it. I don't know where communism has worked. I don't see it. And I know the president of the United States is calling the mayor of New York a communist. No, he calls himself a socialist. That's what I'm going to go with. He's a democratic socialist. He swears it's working in New York City. I'm not so sure. But listen to Mamdani with this quote right here. Let me read this to you. Quote, I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. I think we're seeing a hunger that is not just felt by New Yorkers, but frankly, by Americans from coast to coast for a new kind of politics, one that puts working people at the heart of it. This is what Mamdani is saying. He's talking about working people because he knows that's the language everybody wants to hear. He knows they're not interested in hearing anything else. And if you're the Democratic Party, you got to pay attention. You know why? Because your leadership in the House and in the Senate could be in a world of trouble.
Stephen A. Smith, saying it out loud on national television. He is not a socialist. He does not want socialism. And he sees Mamdani coming for the Democratic Party from the inside. While critics say this is the message Democratic House and Senate leaders need to hear, according to reporting from Vital City and the New York City Comptroller's Office, Mamdani discovered a $12 billion budget deficit within his very first month in office, the largest budget gap since the Great Recession. To close it, he has already needed a $28 billion bailout from the state of New York, a nearly 50% jump in state aid to the city in just 5 years. His total budget clocks in at $124.7 billion, the largest annual budget in New York City history, and larger than the entire annual spending of most U.S. states. And this is just year one. His own comptroller's office projects budget gaps of $6.66 billion, $6.75 billion, and $7.11 billion for the following 3 years. In Maher's view, if this is what year one of the affordability revolution looks like, every working family in America should be very worried about what happens by year 4.
Government gets too big, it crowds out private investment. You have Democrats who decide they want to use the powers of government over corporate interests, over small business interests. They take away the ability of working families to keep food on the table because the taxes are too high, the regulations are too broad, and people cannot make ends meet. That's what socialism is from the Democrat Party, and it's worse with Mamdani. This guy is a communist. His plans will not work. They've never worked anywhere around the globe. And if you think it's going to work in New York City, it's simply not. I understand people are concerned about the prices. You could blame Joe Biden and the Democrat Party for that. Going from Democrat to communist is not going to save New York City. It's only going to make matters worse.
Never worked. Anywhere. On the globe. Critics say this is the historical record is on Donald's side in ways young Americans have simply never been shown in modern classrooms. Venezuela used to be the richest country in South America. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, its socialist government caused an 80% collapse in GDP. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans have now fled 1 out of every 5 people in the entire country. To Maher, these are not old data points from a dusty textbook. These are the modern receipts sitting in front of every voter today.
Yes, my vote is in play. I'm not voting for anyone who thinks the wrong side won the Cold War or cheers for the Intifada like it's the World Cup. It's so ironic from the people who obsess about colonization. You know what's being colonized now? The Democratic Party. Last month, 2 Democratic congressmen released an open pledge they wanted their fellow Democratic members to sign. It said, "We are capitalist, not socialist. We want safety, not lawlessness. We are proud, not ashamed of America." These should not be hard words for a congressional Democrat to sign on to. You know how many did? 8. 8 out of 212. Guys, really, there's got to be an easier way to lose the swing states. And no, this is not where most Democratic politicians are right now, but it's also becoming a raging fire festival in the party that neither is anyone putting out.
8 signatures out of 212. That is the whole diagnosis. Critics believe that number lands harder than any polling data he could have shown. Because the pledge these Democrats declined to sign focused on principles that many supporters described as basic American values. Support for capitalism, support for public safety, pride in the country. And 204 members of the party's own House caucus could not bring themselves to put their names on any of it. That right there is Maher's whole point. The party has been quietly colonized from the inside, and the moderate wing has now become too scared to fight back, because the activist wing controls both the primary process and the online conversation.
Gen Z thinks socialism's wired and capitalism's tired and billionaires are what's for dinner. And who can blame them? If you're 30 and still sharing a bathroom with roommates, capitalism isn't working for you. People will reject any economic system where there's strange hair on the soap. No one wants to be approaching middle age and still writing their name on food before they put it in the fridge. So they're quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked, like Kevin Federline. I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland, but then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
That is Maher's message to every young American drawn to Mamdani's promises. Look, Maher is right that sharing a bathroom with roommates at 30 years old is not the deal young Americans were sold. But housing did not get expensive because the market failed. It got expensive because the government has been actively strangling housing supply for decades. According to a landmark poll published in the American Economic Review, 93% of professional economists agree that rent control reduces both the quantity and the quality of available housing. Stanford researchers studying San Francisco found that landlords removed 30% of rent-controlled units from the market, cutting the overall rental supply by 15% and pushing rents up 7% across the entire city. In New York City today, the vacancy rate has already dropped to 1.4%, the lowest in more than 50 years, according to the city's own housing and vacancy survey.
Communists thought selfishness could be cast out of human nature. Russian revolutionaries spoke of the new Soviet man who wasn't motivated by self-interest, but instead wanted to be part of a collective. No, it turns out he wanted to be on a yacht in a Gucci tracksuit holding a vodka and a prostitute. Not standing in line all day for a potato. The problem with communism, and with some very recent ideologies here at home, is that they think you can change reality by screaming at it. That you can bend human nature by holding your breath. But that's the difference between reality and your mommy. Lincoln once said that you can repeal all past history, but you still cannot repeal human nature.
You cannot repeal human nature. That is Maher's final answer. While critics say this is a sentence every young American should think about. Every socialist experiment in modern history has crashed into the exact same wall. Human beings do not become perfect just because a political party tells them to. Instead, the leaders get rich. The people get poor, the dissenters get silenced, and the country ends up in economic freefall. To Maher, Mamdani's rise inside the Democratic Party is not a small political story. It is a signal the nation should pay attention to. New York is the biggest financial city in the country. According to the New York State Comptroller, the securities industry alone accounts for more than 20% of the entire state's tax revenue. When Wall Street packs its bags and leaves for Miami, the schools break, the transit breaks, the libraries break. The very services Mamdani promised his voters, free groceries, free childcare, free buses, collapse before they can even open. His much-promised free childcare pilot has already been scaled down to just 40 seats in a single Manhattan building. His free bus plan has already been quietly pushed to another day. If this is what delivering on the promise looks like, the country is watching very closely. Bill Maher already made his case. The country will decide what happens next. But the receipts are already in, and every single one of them tells the same story. Now I want to hear from you. So tell me, can New York survive an experiment this radical? And will the Democratic Party finally speak up before it loses everything? Is Bill Maher the last honest liberal left in America with the guts to name the problem?